All right.
Hey everyone, Merja and Amelia here. Welcome to Real Conversations with INFJs and INFPs. This is season 1, episode 5.
Merja here is an INFJ and is the author and facilitator of the Integration Mentor Program. She is an MBTI certified practitioner and personality profiler, founder of Sumiloff Academy of Human Integration and the INFX Project. She's also written 2 best-selling courses, The 4 People Within, which is an extension on Jungian work, and the INFX Unveiled, INFX Deep Dive, and INFX Mastermind, which all show INFJs and INFPs how to live a more authentic and productive life. When she is not busy with work, which seems like all the time, she is spending time with her partner, Peter, and their collection of beloved dogs and horses.
And Amelia is an INFJ as well. She's a mentor who helps people become free from emotional abuse. With her work, clients finally move on from what's holding them back in life. And she's a fully qualified integration mentor and loves helping people transform themselves. When she's not working, she is looking at her own personal development, and she spends time in her garden, and she's reading or cooking or walking her massive big dog, Doggo.
And today is an interview with Merja here, and we're just going to shoot some rapid fire questions at her, and we hope it will help you get to know Merja a little bit better. So, are you ready, Merja?
Let's do it.
All right. First question, what is it like inside your mind?
It's busy. It's very, very busy. Those of you who don't know, I have an undiagnosed ADHD as well as an INFJ mind. And because my work is so stimulating, I have a lot of different areas of my life that I'm very active in. And because my life is so stimulating, it's very busy in my mind.
Nice. And what is it like when things are going well for you?
Very productive. I just get things done, just hammer everything, get things through, and I feel really relaxed in the flow of the business of life.
Nice. And what is it like when things are not going well for both the 10-year-old inner child and that 3-year-old inner child?
Yeah. So as an INFJ, my 10-year-old inner child is a scientist, so inward facing thinking, and she has a really hard time trying to control everything. So when we're really busy and if I'm not in a good place, my scientist 10-year-old inner child tries to make order out of things that don't necessarily fall into any kind of an order, or there's too many things that you can't possibly order them. So she gets that's what happens for her. My 3-year-old inner child, which of course is outward facing sensing for an INFJ, she just wants to do exercise or do more and more activities. It becomes this hyper active, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that and then I'm going to do this and that, and it just keeps going. I just don't stop. So that's not a good sign. So if that happens, then a couple days afterwards, I just have to rest if it gets to that point.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And what is something you are challenged with right now?
I'm actually a little bit, for those of you who've listened to some of the previous episodes, we talked a little bit about PTSD and so on. I'm actually a little bit PTSD. I'm at the verge. I can feel myself starting to get triggered about the narcissistic abuse and the gaslighting that's going on, especially in the US politics right now. Very difficult to relax into. So when you've had an experience as a child where your father has been an abusive narcissist who's just gaslighting you all the time, it's very difficult to see a person in a position of power doing the same thing to the citizens. So that's something I'm really struggling with right now.
Yeah, it sounds like something that would be absolutely challenging for for you. What have you done that has helped with that challenge?
Turn off social media, turn off phones, turn off everything, just go and play with the horses. Because honestly, you know, the reason why it's so stressful is because I want to protect people from this kind of abuse, and I can't. There's like literally, I am physiologically unable to protect everyone against this type of abuse. So that's what I do. I just have to switch off. Yeah.
And what is something that you've done with this that has not been helpful?
Trying to manage it. So trying to put things into order, because the challenge with any kind of narcissistic behavior pattern or any kind of gaslighting is that it doesn't actually make sense. What these types of manipulative people do is they tell you what the truth is, inverted commas, that's not actually in line with what actual truth is. So you can't possibly think, you can't arrange the thoughts, because literally those two things don't match. So just kind of, you know, that doesn't help. Trying to make sense of it does not help, because there is no sense to be made.
Yes. Yes, and that's something that, sorry, go for it.
No, I just wanted to say that please, like, this is no anti-Republican piece at all. This is just this one person who's there. I have friends in every walk of life, and this is just this one person that's exhibiting these behaviors, and the consequences of those behaviors are coming, because that's just how life works. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah. Why is it challenging for you?
I think at the bottom, at the very bottom of it, is because I know what that abuse feels like, and you end up like, so let's just say, and this was my experience as a child, innocent people end up taking responsibility for the abuser's behavior. And I see so many people being radicalized right now. And that's what happened to me. I was radicalized into believing that my father was this amazing person. Of course, there were amazing aspects of it. I'm not saying that's, you know, that's every person has amazing aspects to them. But I think at the very bottom of why I'm having such a hard time with it is because I know who will pay the price for this abuse, and it's usually not the abuser, and I can't protect those people, and it hurts me in my heart.
Yep. Yeah, I can see that. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's also pretty self-aware as well of all the dynamics that are going on, especially here in the United States.
Yeah.
And switching gears a bit here, what personal development tools have worked for you?
Well, the obvious answer, of course, is the 4 people within work, because, you know, I wouldn't put my name on something that I didn't wholeheartedly believe that would work, or that hadn't worked for me. I'm not like that. For those of you who know me, you know that. So I'm very clear about what I promote, as like what I'm willing to put my name on, as in that I can still sleep at night. So that's my kind of internal gauge. So the 4 people within has been the most transformational piece. Of course, as a certified MBTI profiler, Myers-Briggs and the 4 people within together has been very powerful. The drama triangle by Stephen Karpman, just understanding how to step off it, has been very helpful. And I really like the love languages work as well. I think it's Gary Chapman. And how I can put those love languages, because all the 4 different people within me have different love languages. So how can I actually show them support on a daily basis through those love languages?
Beautiful. And how have these tools worked for you? So what have been the results from them?
Well, a lot of it is just grounding myself, because with ADHD you have to keep steady. You have to keep grounding yourself into what the reality actually is, and then take action on the high leverage items. And that's how you can get really far in life, especially with ADHD, is really maximizing your strengths and optimizing or delegating what you're not so good at. So that's something that's happened. But a lot of these tools are about self-nourishment. And I want to mention another tool. It's the Playing the Matrix by Mike Dooley. And that has been particularly important for me for my inward intuition, because it's very intuitive work, and just bringing together the intuitive frame of taking in information and then putting it into practical action. That's really what I've used all of those tools in, either self-care or taking practical steps in life.
Nice. And what are some of the things in your personal development journey that did not help you?
Working with people who think they have all the answers. So if you have a person who believes that their method works for everybody, or is appropriate for everybody, that doesn't work. And that's why I'm a little bit freaked out. The scientist mind within me is a little bit freaked out, simply because if a person has applied the 4 people within method, there hasn't been one that it hasn't worked for yet. And I feel uncomfortable with that, because in science you find both, what works and what doesn't work. And if one part of those is missing, it's not a good sign, because there's usually then something wrong with the balance of the what you're offering in different ways. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but anyhow, so I am looking forward to getting feedback from people who really applied the 4 people within and it didn't work for them. So I'm looking forward to that.
Interesting. That sounds very interesting. So with the people who thought that they knew everything, how didn't it work for you?
Well, there's a certain rigidity and ego that comes into play. And of course, not all ego is bad. Ego is important. If you want to achieve anything in life, you want to have a bit of ego to drive that achievement. But honestly, it's more to do with just having, like, if somebody believes that they have answers to everything, fundamentally what they say is that this is where anybody can go. This is where anybody can get to. And I can't comprehend a world where there are those limitations, that there's an ultimate person, because I believe in the ultimate potential for the human being to grow and for humankind to grow. So that's what doesn't work for me, is the rigidity, or setting the ceiling, or somehow setting a standard that if you don't hit here, then you haven't somehow achieved something. Because the bottom line about every piece of personal development work that we do is that whenever you are honestly there for yourself, when you're able to support yourself through hard times, these are big deals, right? And they should be celebrated. So the thought that there's some imaginary arbitrary level that you need to get to in order to be worthy, I just don't subscribe to that at all. You are worthy.
Beautiful, and very well said as well. And you can really feel your passion for why it's not working for you, and then how you use that to create change and help people.
Like, if we don't develop, we start rotting, we start decaying. So it's either development or it's decay. It's very rarely that one can just be solid for all of their lives, like at one developmental level, and be really, really happy and fulfilled by just being at that. We need, in order to feel fulfilled and happiness, we need to be fluctuating, because if there's no contrast, there's no reason we can't feel happiness if there's not a little bit of a struggle or strife or sadness as well.
Yeah, and when you say growing, do you mean like always moving forward with it, or because sometimes moving backwards is part of growing?
Well, I mean, failing, you've heard me talk about failing forward, which is, I think, the first module in the 4 People Within course, because you want to set a precedence for saying, you're going to have a hard time with this course when you do it, but it's going to be so worth at the end of it. But yeah, of course, you're not. So there are certain levels that you kind of hit in your personal development plateaus, if you like, and then you need to rest. And then sometimes you take a step back to really get that lesson, what seems like a step back. But what you're actually doing is you're having relapses and you're failing forward. Just so long as you keep learning from the relapse, it's never a bad thing. Unless, of course, you're hurting yourself or other people, in the process in an irreversible way. But oftentimes things are actually reversible.
Yeah, when I heard that, I just wanted people to know who are listening, like because moving backwards is so much a part of personal development. It's like if you are moving backwards, or if you are frustrated, or it's like that's normal, and that's part of it. And frustration often brings creativity and looking at things in different ways that you wouldn't have seen without being frustrated.
For sure. Yeah. And, anybody who thinks that they can grow these amazing branches and leaves without growing roots first is going to get a big shock.
Or self-development is just like a straight up.
It really
You're just going straight
not.
up.
No.
So personal snapshot wise, what are you doing that is working for you right now?
Okay. So I'm just reprioritizing my life. So really looking at what are the main things in my life, and then reprioritizing that and actually putting the time into those things. Right now, I'm a little bit time poor because I will be going away in a couple of days' time. But so that's fine. But what I'm working on right now is really giving myself a permission to reprioritize in a way that makes me feel happy on a day-to-day basis, or happier than I already am.
Nice. And what are you doing that's not the best thing for you right now?
I think I'm on YouTube too much, honestly. Keeping an eye on stuff that I can't control. That's a recipe for disaster. I mean, what I should really be doing, and I'm not saying this is what should be done. And I rarely use the word should, but I'm using it in this instance because I know it works. So what I really should be doing is giving myself like a half an hour window at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day or lunchtime to catch up, and then not go onto YouTube at all.
I was hoping you were going to say looking at funny cat videos or something like that.
Well,
30 minutes
Amelia,
of funny cat videos.
Look, honestly, like that works for me. So that wouldn't be the right answer for this question. But I got to tell you, like I am so blessed in so many ways. The people I know, the amount of funny memes, like I keep getting in every, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on, everywhere, by email, by text message, on WhatsApp. I keep getting funny memes all day long. So I'm very blessed that way. That's one of the great things about knowing so many people like intimately, because I tend to with people I work, I tend to get to know them really well because of the nature of our work. So they also get to know me a little bit, but they find something that they find hilarious and they just pop it over to me. So yeah, that's really funny. So I do get a lot of laughs.
Nice. So what does a day look like in your life? So how do you fill your days?
with a lot of stuff. So through the reprioritization space, I've been focusing more on the equestrian side of things. So I'm spending about 5 hours a day on just equestrian activities. And then another maybe 7 or 8 hours on work. And then I sleep there somewhere as well. And I make sure that I make time with my partner, one-on-one time every day as well. So those are the most important things for me. Whatever form that takes, that's a whole different thing. But yeah, that's what my days look like. And I am a home bird, which means that I do like being at home. So if I have to go out somewhere, it feels like a massive disruption.
And what is your heart's vocation?
My heart's vocation is really to do with self-leadership and understanding yourself and building meaningful relationships. And that comes from just having that compassion and effectiveness and industriousness in your own life, and sharing that with other people, so sharing what's meaningful for you with other people. So that's really my heart's vocation, if you like.
And just to let people know, so when I say heart's vocation, that's just doing things that you love to do.
Yeah.
And what are you doing for income right now?
Well, I'm one of those privileged people who have built their lives in a way that I can do exactly what I love, what my heart's vocation is, and get paid for it. So teaching, speaking, writing, this. So yeah, it's all about the self-leadership and for some people it's team leadership, if it's familial leadership or your sports team or whatever. So it's all just circling around that compassion and shared compassion and effectiveness.
Got it. And what is giving you hope right now?
That's a really good question, because there's so much that is challenging and there's so much that's easy, and kind of finding that, like, what to focus on. But something that's giving me a lot of hope right now is how people are really starting to see each other a little bit more again. I felt like there's been a really big divide between people for the last couple of years all around the world. There's a lot of separation and not seeing things from each other's perspective, and now people feel like they're starting to come together, at least some people. I mean, there's always going to be the kind of the extremists in everything in life, but that's giving me hope to see that people are coming together, and especially young people are giving me a lot of hope right now in how they want to see their future when we are gone.
Yeah.
So.
Why is this giving you the hope that you just mentioned?
Yeah, because I think people are experiencing their sense of personal empowerment a lot earlier in life these days. I think the tools are out there, access to the information is out there. So it feels like we've moved away from the swinging from how children were brought up in the 40s and 50s under really strict control, and then the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s onwards, which was a lot more flexible, and even parenting styles. You can talk about parenting styles, but a lot more flexible. So there has been a big massive swing, whereas now it seems to me like there's a lot of parenting that's happening that these young people are seeing. They're doing it for themselves. They're doing inner parenting, things like the 4 People Think course. They're learning the parental styles that actually work, where you do what you love and you allow yourself to have a life that you love, but also at the same time you hold yourself accountable to your conduct and what you do create in the world. So that's really, I think that's what's giving me a lot of hope.
Beautiful. And in your opinion, in your experiences, how can you have hope in challenging times? A lot of people feel like just what's going on right now can be really challenging.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is everything that I've talked about today is my opinion. It's subjective. It's my experiences. So I'm not talking about ultimate truths of the universe here. I'm talking about, what I've experienced. I would say that when you're facing challenging times, number one, know that you're not alone. There are others who have also faced challenging times. Number two, how you're feeling right now is not the whole story. So when you're being challenged, it's not all of your life. And number three, if you do your inner parenting work, you can see a way out of it. So you can become a proactive problem solver when it comes to challenging times. So it's easier to hold the hope and tolerate the challenging times simultaneously when you do your 4 people within work. So those would be my kind of top 3. No, you're not alone. You are absolutely not alone. There are people who are going through similar struggles. There is a way out of it. You just may not know what it is right now. So how you're feeling is not the whole story. And then if you learn to do proactively your own, at least 4 people within work, which is what I can testify for, then you can find the ways that you can be challenged and be happy simultaneously.
And there are so many good points with what you just said, because I think part of challenging times without seeing a clear endpoint can feel like, oh, I don't know how long this is going to go on. How am I going to get through this? And then you can kind of start to spiral down and down and down to getting to a point of real bad despair. And then you're like, well, I'm completely alone with this. No one knows how I feel.
Yep. And all of those things are true. So if you don't share your struggles with other people don't know how you're feeling. They can't know. So there is that kind of, when we are on that downward spiral, we talk ourselves into believing that nobody can help us. And I've been there, like, I get it so much. So that's what I would say, to people who need to hear that there is hope. Yes, there is hope. There's absolutely hope. You just need to know where to get the information that you need in order to change your current circumstances. And that can be hard when you're in it.
It can be very hard.
Mm-hmm.
It can be very, very hard. So switching gears, how do you inner parent yourself? And to be more specific here, and I'll let you choose the questions. I saw your mouth opening. What are the words you say to yourself when you're feeling anxious?
Yeah. Well, how I inner parent myself is consistently, and feels sometimes like constantly. And so it's more like a lifestyle for me than it is a tool that I use, simply because it's just so much quicker. Everything's just so much quicker. That's something I learned about the ADHD, that if I want to keep up with my mind, I need to have certain limitations or boundaries that I put on myself. And one of those boundaries is that I will just automatically I'm going to adopt 4 people within as a lifestyle for myself, so that I can resolve the problems fast enough so that I can keep up with my mind. So that's been one of the things. And that's why I do it constantly and consistently. What are the specific things that I say to myself? Well, it really depends what's needed. So I identify the person who's speaking, who's having the challenge, and then I find words that actually work for that person. So a thinker, you wouldn't use feeling words, and you wouldn't use thinking words for a feeler. So it's this, you have to find the way to really communicate with that part of you that needs that communication. And then I just try to listen to what they have to say and validate it, because once I find that, and these are all true with people, you can use these tools with working with people. So I find it that if I validate myself enough, or that part of myself enough, they can relax and they can say, you know what, this wasn't actually such a big deal. I can just relax into life and not make this into something more than what it has to be. So if I'm feeling anxious, you know, for my 3-year-old inner child, I can say, because she's a sensor, I can say, hey, you know what, this is the current reality, but we can change the current reality going forward. And so what can we do right now that make you feel better, even just a little bit better? And for the 10-year-old who's a thinker, I can say, hey, you know, what do you think is the way out of this situation? What would you like to see happen here? For the feeler, which is my inner parent, if she's struggling, which can happen sometimes, my adult self says, look, mate, your needs are important, and I'm not going to let you compromise yourself now. We're going to actually just shift gears and go into another direction here. And if the adult self is having a hard time, which can happen, and that's often where existential crisis and that kind of stuff comes up, the inner parent is then there to say, look, there's a reason why you were born. It's important that you're here, because I do believe in destiny. I don't know if destiny is exactly the right word, but I believe that we're all here for something. We're all here for a significant reason. So if my adult self is having a hard time, my inner parent says to my adult self, hey, there's a reason why you're here, and it might not make sense right now. It might not fit into your vision of what's happening, might not fit into your vision of what you thought it should be. So let's just see what unfolds and find out some good stuff here, because it will happen. You will make some observations about things that will maybe help you move on to making the connection then. Is that what you were after, or?
Yeah. Because I feel like you can say, okay, you talk to your 3-year-old, you talk to your 10-year-old, but I think it's important to hear people say, like, the words. What are the words you say to these different parts of you, so people can start to hear, oh, I can say this to myself. Oh, I can go say this to myself, rather than just be like, you talk to your 3-year-old inner child. Because I think that is a nice jump start of how to talk to these different parts of you.
Yeah.
Which I feel like can be a missing link sometimes, describing these things, these different parts of you.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, saying to my 3-year-old inner child, look, what's happening right now is not the full picture. You know, what do we need to do right now in order to make you feel a little bit better right now? What needs to happen? So really engaging those parts with those specific questions. Yeah, I agree. It's very important.
And as we're talking about the words that you can use, what are the words or things you say to yourself when you are feeling hopeless?
That depends on the situation and the person that I'm speaking to. So again, I'm taking an individualized approach to which part of myself I'm speaking to. So, and using the thinking words or feeling words or imagining this, you know, being in a different way, or what are the concrete steps that we can take to make this different. But when I'm feeling utterly hopeless, and that did happen with the PTSD, the one thing that really worked for me was reminding myself that there is the pain reality and there is the non-pain reality. So there's a reality in which my pain exists, and then there's a reality in which my pain doesn't exist. So for example, other people's lives, they're not consumed by my pain. I might be consumed by my pain, but they're not. That includes, you know, people close to me, clients, you know, people that I work with, people that I operate with, people who live in my vicinity. So it's completely okay to try to navigate between those two worlds. So it's completely okay to not be devastated all the time. And it's completely okay to not be happy all the time. So that was one thing that really worked when I was at that stage of real personal crisis.
Yeah, that's a great example of what to say to yourself when we're hopeless, because it's not a fun place to be.
No, and it's not a black and white place to be either. There's so many steps between those two camps, your pain reality and your non-pain reality. So you can be anywhere on that scale at any given second and then be completely somewhere else, or be in both and just go, I'm in this weird space right now. And that's totally cool too.
Yeah. And then you'll have a more nuanced answer to this question. But most likely, when you are, what are the words you say to yourself when you're feeling angry?
What do I say to myself, or what do I say when I'm angry?
Either way you want to take that.
Well, I can tell you, yesterday I wasn't happy when I was chasing after a pony for 2 hours that didn't want to be caught. And yes, for those of you who are horse enthusiasts, I know how to catch a pony. I just didn't want to do it the way that was forceful I wanted to give him every chance, so I did. So we ended up in a space where I had to just make it happen. But really, so in all I could say in that moment is, because you can't lose your cool, because if you do, with a highly spirited horse and a horse who has a lot of complexes, will not want to have anything to do with you. So in that situation, I was very angry, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is so frustrating. So that was my specific for that. But no, when I'm angry, these days, I try to just let myself be angry in the privacy of my own space, or with safe people who don't challenge my anger, that actually allow me to be angry, like my partner. He's amazing at holding space. And it's really about just what is it that you actually need to do with it. So the things that I might say to myself is just express the anger, just express it, don't let it bottle up. Let it out in a safe environment, and then you can move on with other things that have nothing to do with your anger.
Nice. Thanks for that. And those answers there. It's also interesting to see how people react to things differently as well.
Yes.
So if you, the listener, and it might be like, oh, I react totally different to these things than Merja.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to see, even if you're an INFJ or if you're an INFP, you're like, oh, I might take things totally differently, and that's great. Because everyone's
Absolutely.
different.
Oh my goodness. And you've done the MBTI Global Step 2 assessment yourself, Amelia, so you know about the facets. But for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, there is an actual MBTI assessment that you can take that gives you facets for different parts of your introversion or extroversion, different parts of your thinking or feeling, different parts of your sensing or intuiting, or different parts of your judging or perceiving. And what that does actually, and at the very end of that assessment, you can see where you sit. So most INFJs are here in initiating, and I'm over here. So that's why when people say, is this an INFJ thing? Well, not necessarily. Like, nothing's really a personality type thing. It's what you do, and there are people who could be any other type of personality that can relate to what you're saying. Now, are most INFPs likely to have things in common? Of course they are. Are most INFJs going to have some things in common? Yes, for sure, because the 4 people within are similar. It's just they all take a slightly different form and different flavor. So does that make sense? Like, does that actually answer what you were, or was that a continuation of what you were saying? Because I feel like I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole. I can feel my ADHD coming on.
It's like excitement, and there we go.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. but I'm sure, yeah, it made sense to me. Audience members, if that didn't make sense to you, write us a note and we can clear it up.
For sure.
And you were talking about inner parenting, and we've been talking about inner parenting not only on this call, but in the other podcast episodes we've done.
Yeah.
What do you think people are most confused about with inner parenting?
I think that, well, that's actually a question that other people can answer really well. But in my experience, being okay with being okay with not being okay, so allowing yourself a space to not be doing it perfectly, or to kind of be defensive about their own growth and where they are. So what I find fascinating is people who believe that they already know everything, especially INFJs or INFPs. They are very much coming out of the inner child space, which means that their inner children believe that they know everything. And that is something that you kind of bump into a lot, because everybody, they do the test, some online test, and they come out as this, and they read a little bunch of things, and a lot of things make sense. And because we're highly intuitive people, now we start to believe that we have all the information that we can possibly need, and then we start making our own assumptions around that information. So that's something that is one of the hardest things about inner parenting, is to stay humble and say, and any person who's a parent out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Your children can be your biggest teachers. So that's what I think there's a lot of confusion around, like embracing the inner children without letting them run the show and make you think like you've somehow arrived, because none of us ever arrive. None of us ever arrive. And that's the beauty of life. But that thought can be very confrontational if you are overwhelmed. So if that's the case for anybody tuning in, please know I hear you, I get you. Let's get your life into a stable footing, and then you can start look forward to the wonder that comes with the unknown. But please, don't feel like I'm saying everybody should embrace the unknown. You can't embrace the unknown until you are on a steady footing. So, hang in there. You got this. We can do this.
Got it. Why do you think that is the most confusing thing for people?
I think because there's a coping mechanism. And the coping mechanism usually, especially for INFJs and INFPs, is if I figure this situation out, then I'll be safe. So then we start figuring situations out in our minds. We use the thinker and we use the sensor part of us. We kind of go like, okay, what's happening and what does it mean? What's happening and what does it mean? What's happening and what does it mean? And it keeps accelerating. And then that keeps us safe, especially in our childhoods. It makes us keep safe from those that we perceive have the power to hurt us. But then when we're grown-ups, we still hold on to that possibility that somebody's going to hurt us. We still feel like somebody else has power over us, which isn't actually true, because when you're a grown-up, like when you're a child, sure, the people in the positions of power in your life pretty much can dictate what you do or don't do, or what you can think or don't not think or say or not say, right? But when you're a grown-up person, you still are holding on to those beliefs, but you haven't realized yet that you actually have the power to be exactly who you are, think exactly what you think, and then build your life exactly how you want to build it. So I think the reason why it's happening, that we're holding on to this egotistical kind of shield of who we are, knowing everything, is because we're still feeling like we are at the receiving end of the world. We're still feeling like we are possibly going to be hurt by others. So that's why I think that's what I think. Why is this happening? And those shields and those coping mechanisms, they've kept us safe for a really long time in our lives. And that's been amazing. And thank you, inner children, for that. Thank you so much for keeping me safe. But at some stage in our lives, in my life, I've realized that, you know, every person is not a threat. Of course, there are people who are, but every person is not. So I can move away from the black and white into a lot more nuance, if that makes sense.
Makes sense to me. And I do want to point out that if you're listening to what Merja just said in these last couple questions, and a voice came up and was like, I don't know about that. Like if Merja said, like, we'll never be complete, or we'll never fully like make it, like, check mark, I'm done, and then can go coast off into the sunset. Like if a part of you is like, I don't know about that, or that's wrong, that is a great example of a possible voice of your inner children. So just showing you how these voices might be popping up inside of us.
Yeah, and especially, and I get it myself, exactly, to keep us safe. That's exactly it. So, because if our minds or thoughts or what our own perceptions of ourselves are being challenged by a person that you didn't invite to challenge them, then you're not going to want to hear that. That's going to feel threatening. So if you invite somebody to challenge your thoughts, then of course, you know, you're going to be a lot more open to saying, okay, it could be true. If you have a definite, no, that's not true for me, that's wrong. If you're an INFJ or an INFP, that kind of black and whiteness is probably going to be your 10-year-old inner child speaking and just saying, you know, here's how it is. Because if you have, so let's just say that you have a really healthy, healthy no response to this, that this is how it sounds like. I hear what Merja is saying. I love that it's worked for her. My truth over here is like this, and they don't match. And that's what grown-ups, the inner grown-ups sound when they don't agree with something. And you can see a big difference between the grown-ups disagreeing and the inner children disagreeing, because the inner children feel like they are being threatened, whereas the grown-ups feel like, you know what, nothing's wrong with the situation, nobody's wrong, all good, everybody just do what's right for you.
Yeah, the inner children are much more, there's a lot more emotion around the inner children's responses versus the inner parents, which are pretty non-attached to.
Well, that's a tricky subject, because both INFJs and INFPs have a feeling function in the inner grown-up. So when we say emotional, I would say that a well-developed INFJ or INFP is less definite about their position in not their position necessarily, but their opinion being the right one, the only right opinion. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I could see how the emotional piece could come in there with what I said.
Yeah, or kind of like a state of arousal, like being hyper vigilant. Hypervigilance, I think, really shows up in the inner children in all types. That's something I've observed in all types. But I want to say again, like, if you're getting really triggered by what we're talking about and you're saying this is bullshit, this work, don't use the work. You go and you find the work that works for you, and that's the work you need to do. And nobody else gets to nominate what work you should or shouldn't be doing. But if you do find it helpful, or if you find it a little bit challenging, there might be something in it for you. So, yeah.
And final question here. If you could say one thing to our audience today, what would that be?
Oh my goodness. Most of our audience is going to be INFJs and INFPs, but there's probably going to be other types in there as well. Maybe you've shared this episode with somebody that isn't an INFJ or an INFP, but to give them an opportunity to understand you a little bit better. So, but I'm predominantly speaking to INFJs and INFPs right now. And I just want to say, we are currently, like if you zoom out and you look at the globe as a whole, we have been, since the industrial age, we have been focusing on effectiveness, cutting cost, making things more efficient for a really long time. And my perception is that we are entering a whole new era of where authenticity and harmony are going to be bigger currencies than your thinking faculties, and where intuition and foresight is going to be embraced more than what's happening right now. You know, what's the most efficient way of doing what we're doing right now. So I believe that the world is entering into a future that is, that where, as INFJs and INFPs, our ways of feeling, or our capacity of feeling and our capacity for intuition, is going to be a very rare commodity and very highly valued commodity. And so what I want to say is, if things feel really hard right now, it's because we're at, in my opinion, we're at a cusp of change. Hang in there, do your own work, get really strong and healthy in both your feeling, your intuition. Combine that with your thinking and your sensing faculties. Get really rounded up, get really balanced with your 4 people within you, that you can show up as the best version of yourself. And when you do that, you will be so ready for this new era where people are going to be put before profit, where authenticity is going to be it's going to be embraced, and harmony is going to be embraced as these amazing levers that can bring a lot more productivity in the world. So we have the inside track right now, and it's our job to just keep going on that inside track and trust that we will emerge as embraced, respected kind of people going forward. We have a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight to offer to the world. And if we can find a way to bring it out from the depths of ourselves, we have the capacity to be very successful and celebrated in even in our lifetime right now, but especially going forward in the future.
What a way to end the interview, Merja. It's been a pleasure to have me be your interviewer today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, for sure. Thank you, Amelia, for these questions and for taking the time to do this interview. It's always very humbling for me to be interviewed, because I don't see myself as somebody. I see myself as somebody who's doing stuff. so I want to say, like, you know, the when people kind of take the time to get to know me a little bit better, it feels like a humbling experience that there's interest in that. So thank you for taking this time to do this.
You're welcome.
And yeah, and I want to say for our listeners as well, if you've enjoyed this episode of Real Conversations with INFJs and INFPs, please hit the like button and leave us a message, because we're not doing this alone. Nobody's doing this in isolation. We revel in your wins. We can help you through your challenges. And also, if there's a person, a friend or a colleague or a family member who you think should hear what we talked about today, or should hear about what we talked about in a previous episode, just to help them understand you a little bit better, feel free to share this with them. And thank you so much for tuning in today. And again, thanks again, Amelia, for this. And actually, our next and final episode of this season is going to be, we're going to turn the tables, and I'm going to be interviewing Amelia for another episode of Real Conversations with INFJs and INFPs. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. I'll see you at the next episode. Take care.